This is the Comics Alternative Kickstarter, discovering Swan Song. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Comics Alternative Kickstarter. This is the weekly series devoted to comics-related Kickstarter campaigns and just letting you guys, our listeners, know some of the really interesting things that are out there and encourage you guys to support these kind of creators. And on this week's show, I have with me Jeff Ellis and Oliver McTavish-Wisden. They are respectively the assistant director and founder, and then the executive director of Cloudscape Comics. Their project is Swan Song, a music anthology. Jeff and Oliver, welcome to the show.
All right, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, so to get the ball rolling, why don't you do a pitch? I mean, what is Swan Song?
Swan Song is an anthology about music. So all the different artists are working their stories in different directions, different themes, and all of them are sort of connected with music as kind of the central theme. So there's sort of very straightforward stories about bands performing on stage and minstrels, traveling with their lutes. But there's also some really abstract interpretations of our relationship with music.
And from what I've seen, this is quite a large anthology. It's full color and it's 12 by 12 hardcover?
That's correct. It's a 12 by 12 color hardcover book with about 25 stories or so.
Yeah, I think in total it's going to be about 162 pages. So it'll be pretty thick. And we went with 12 by 12 because we wanted it to look like a record from the outside. So there's a little bit of a record motif on the interior title pages that I've been designing right now.
You know, I want to talk to you guys about Cloudscape Comics and the Cloudscape Comics Society later, but I know that Cloudscape is a coalition of indie creators centered in Vancouver. Are all the contributors to Swan Song from Vancouver and the surrounding area?
Well, our mandate has been to promote comics in British Columbia. Mm-hmm. So we generally try to recruit from Vancouver, Lower Mainland, and British Columbia, but we've sort of also opened the door to collaboration between British Columbian and another artist who's not sort of local, quote unquote. And we also are open to people who are former residents of British Columbia. So if you've sort of changed address, but you were kind of originally born and raised, we're also still, the door's still open.
Right. We have a few artists who are living in Halifax currently, but they've spent a lot of their time here, so they still identify as British Columbian for the most part. And plus, our mandate is to be 75% at the minimum BC. Okay. So occasionally, every team will have somebody from BC, and you may have a colorist, or you may work with an artist that's not from BC, but that's still 75% overall.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me about the origins of this project, Swan Song. How did this come about?
Well, Swan Song is, and actually sort of lives up to its name. It is sort of the final iteration of something that started about 10 years ago. So Cloudscape as an organization of cartoonists has existed for the past decade. And annually, we have published an anthology. Each anthology has had a different theme and different sort of formatting and sizes, different colors and paper stocks used. And each one sort of showcased artists from our group and sort of from, again, around the British Columbia area. Our Swan Song is basically meant to be the last board-run anthology. So we have a board of directors who basically oversee all the kind of goings-on at Cloudscape Comics. And we've found ourselves doing a lot of different activities and running an anthology as well as organizing all the other events on the ground has been a bit trying for our board. So we're looking to shift our model where our membership is going to be the ones who propose the book ideas and oversee the development process, and we're going to lend our knowledge and our infrastructure to continue to produce books. But this is sort of the last themed anthology that's organized by the board of directors in our organization.
And just to build onto that a tiny bit more, how our anthology's themes have been chosen every year has been by the membership, by a voting process at our yearly AGM. And the one that everybody voted on this year was the concept of music. It did tie into the idea that this would be the last anthology.
Mm. Well, one of the things I'm curious about, given this theme of music, is how, from where you stand, how have the creators been able to integrate music into a medium that is, for all practical purposes, silent?
Yeah, I mean, music is a real challenge in comics because, as you say, there's no sound associated with it. I think a lot of our artists and a lot of our members were really excited at taking on that challenge. I've definitely seen some really successful depictions of music. I think Scott Pilgrim comes to mind as a comic that did a really great job of communicating sound in a silent format. And I think a lot of our artists have had a lot of fun in their interpretations of how to represent music and sound.
And there have been a lot of different ways that people have done that, like Jeff says. Some people are kind of focusing on what music means to them as people. Some people have done stories about how, like, for example, Tegan and Sarah have changed their life. Or some people are taking a kind of more of a sci-fi concept of what music can be used for in the future. Mm-hmm. There are lots of different ways you can do it without needing the audibility of it all.
That's interesting because as you guys were talking, I just recall that recently we discussed Neil the Horse by Arden Saba, another Canadian, or who's now Catherine Collins. It probably, I guess, to my memory, the best artist who has been able to incorporate music and musicals into the comics. And so, I mean, there are a variety of ways that people could do this. And I guess that we'll see that variety in this Swan Song anthology.
Oh, yeah. It's a very diverse book. There's, I think we're surprised actually at how many genres are spanned within this book. So, honestly, when we put the original call for submissions out, I was expecting lots of autobio talking about their favorite band and why and how it changed their life, and also lots of just band on tour kind of things, or like homages to like Archie's traveling band sort of comic style. And the submissions themselves actually were incredibly diverse. There's science fiction, there's
Pirates.
Fantasy, there's sea shanties with pirates, and there's kind of almost like horrific, scary stories, and then still some of those like personal kind of autobio stories that I was expecting.
And personally, I've got a story about an underground hip-hop shaman league.
That's an interesting mashup there.
Yeah, it's going to be very cool.
Yeah. Now, let's get to some of the specifics. The Kickstarter campaign is going to run until December 9th, which when this show goes up will be, I guess, 2 weeks after that. And you have a goal of just a little over, 25,000 Canadian dollars?
Actually, no, it's $32,000 Canadian.
Oh, okay. Because I'm looking from south of the border, yeah, and it says that you have a $25,021 goal, but I didn't know if that was in Canadian.
Yeah, so
that's depressing.
I think that for the Canadian dollar, yeah. Yeah, well, on our end, we set the goal at the Canadian dollar value, and then I think just for American backers, they're just going to see everything converted automatically based on the exchange rate. Mm-hmm. So that the number you're seeing would be correct for U.S. dollar. Yeah.
Okay. Now you do have your various reward level listed at both the Canadian dollar and then the approximate U.S. dollar value.
Yeah.
And if someone wanted to get the digital version of Swan Song, that would be $15 Canadian, which is, I guess, right now around $12 US. And if someone wanted the physical hardcover edition, that would be $45 Canadian, which right now is about $35 US. So, those are, I guess, the digital and the hard copy levels, but there are a variety of other levels that you have. What can you tell me about those?
Oh yeah, so we have a $60 deluxe edition, which is going to be a download of the Swan Song ebook, kind of in advance of the print edition coming out, as well as the printed Swan Song book, and then it'll also have a enamel pin. It's being designed by our president, Jonathon, Dalton, and it's going to have some postcards featuring art from some of our contributors, including myself. And then we're also going to have some gig posters included. So another member of our group, Kathleen Jacques, who does a comic called Band versus Band, she's a graphic designer by trade, and so she's going to be creating custom concert posters inspired by the stories of Swan Song. So these would be sort of like in-universe gig posters for the music presented in the stories. Mm-hmm. We'll slip those all that in between the pages when we ship it out.
And then we have some other quicker ones. We have the pin itself can be bought at $5, I think. We have a Secret Santa option where you can get a book plus one of our other books chosen at random if you want to get a present for somebody.
And this is, so we should explain this one. We just launched this tier. This is like a new tier that we just added. And we unfortunately will not be able to get Swan Song out in time for Christmas, but we have a back catalog of existing works. So we're calling it the Secret Santa option. So it is going to be a randomly selected book from our back catalog, but we're going to wrap it up in some Christmas wrapping, and we'll send it out, and it will arrive in time for Christmas. So if you're looking for like a Christmas gift idea, we have that. It's also a $60 Secret Santa option. Mm-hmm. And then we also have several different Cloudscape libraries. Our kind of most premium library is, so there's different library levels. So our platinum version of the library, which is $250 Canadian. That is our entire back catalog of books. So absolutely everything we've published in the last 10 years, which is 9 anthologies. And then it would also be our Epic Canadiana 1 and 2, which were sort of side projects we did. Una the Blade, which was something that we did with our member, Steve LeCouliard. Last Night at Wormwood High, which is a self-contained story by Kathleen Gross, another contributing member. And we're also including in here a few rare copies of our first ever anthology. So our original book, Robots, Pine Trees, and Broken Hearts, was a 48-page floppy, and we did a limited print run, and it's been out of print for the last, I'd say, about 8 years. And I had a small stash that I was sort of hanging on to, and we're releasing that for this Kickstarter. So this is a chance to sort of get a book that no one else will be able to get their hands on. It's the first ever anthology we've ever published. So I don't know, maybe a collector's item in the future. But there's only like about, I think, 9 copies left. So we released that as like our platinum level library. So that would be the only way to get a complete library of all of our printed works.
Yeah, that's about it.
Okay. And if our listeners wanted to find out more detail or to see in writing what you guys have been describing, I mean, they can go to Kickstarter.com and, of course, do a search for Swan Song or Cloudscape and easily and quickly find it. Or they could go to the Cloudscape website, which is www.cloudscapecomics, that's one word, cloudscapecomics.com. And on your front page, you have a link to the Kickstarter that takes people right there. So either way, it'd be easy to find out this information. They can also, by going to cloudscapecomics.com, find out more about some of the other stuff that you've been doing. Because, you know, I have to say, some of these books that you've put out in the past, for instance, the anthology, the horror anthology, Bones of the Coast, I was familiar with. I've seen before, and I think that it's wonderful. But other books that you've done, I wasn't familiar. So coming to cloudscapecomics.com was a great way to educate myself on some of the things you guys have been putting out over the past 10 years.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and I would say, like, if anyone's curious about the other books on offer in our library, we have a store tab which has detailed descriptions of every book, and it has art samples from inside of each of those books. So if the Kickstarter hasn't given you enough information on all the books contained in the Platinum Library, on our website, you should be able to make an informed decision about whether you want the entire back catalog or not.
Yeah, also on that website, you have a link to the various webcomics that members of the Cloudscape Collective have maintained. And I know that we do a monthly webcomic series on the Comics Alternative. So, I mean, this is a nice resource for us.
Yeah, we like to highlight as many BC artists as we can. So we have their webcomics on our website. We also have artist profiles for them. And even for people who are just learning, we have our own webcomic for people who are learning called Comic Chunk, which is just kind of like a strip about tips you can use to improve your comic skills.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, you know, more to find out and learn from at cloudscapecomics.com. But your Kickstarter project, Swan Song, the music anthology, it's going to be going on by the time this show goes up for 2 more weeks. It will end on Saturday, December 9th at, 7:54 p.m. Central Time. So that'd be 5:54 Pacific.
Yeah.
Yes, nice.
Yeah. So whether you go to Kickstarter.com or you find it through cloudscapecomics.com, definitely check out Swan Song, the music anthology. And Jeff, Oliver, I wish you the best of luck in your Kickstarter campaign, and let me know how it goes.
We will. Thank you so much.
Thank you.